going to talk about like masking. What is it? What is masking? And just talk about masking and unmasking for ADHD adults specifically. And then I'm also going to apply it to entrepreneurs and real estate agents. And then we're going to talk about like the effects of masking, what that does in a couple, and then the operational costs of masking, because there's actually sometimes masking is something we develop to help us, but other times it can kind of hold us back. Psychological impacts, emotional repercussions, and then how to unmask. What does that look like? What are some things you can do to still help yourself and hit deadlines without forcing yourself? And then also we're going to talk about the benefits of unmasking, what you're going to see when you learn to unmask in your world, and then also what's normal to experience. So that's the agenda for today. And you can also apply this, this can be ADHD, this can be a lot of things. It's really about masking in a sense is covering up parts of yourself. That's really what it is, which I guess I'll start with the definition of masking in itself. So masking is really intentionally or unconsciously camouflaging our ADHD traits or parts of yourself to appear more acceptable, competent, and especially neurotypical. So we're hiding certain parts of ourselves, hiding our traits, so then we can not stand out, right? And you can also apply this to other things. If you have like mental health stuff or chronic illness or things like that, you might push yourself and do stuff that's actually not good for you, but it allows you to not stand out or get in trouble or miss deadlines, that kind of stuff. And when we're in a world that's built primarily for people who don't have ADHD, right? Only 3 to 10% of the population has it, even though the real estate world has a bunch. We might have to mask a lot because we don't want to stand out, and especially like as kids, right? You've heard me talk about this, that we get 20,000 more negative messages about our behavior by the age of 8. If you have ADHD, studies have shown that. And so we're hearing, don't get up. Why can't you sit still? Why did you forget this? Why are you late? You only want to do what you want to do. You're too sensitive. You're selfish. We can hear all that stuff when we might just be trying to regulate our system or take care of ourselves or avoid overstimulus or understimulus. And so masking can be a lot of things. And so a couple things, that we might do to mask, we might suppress our impulses, suppress something we want to say. We might stim, right? We might or we might not let ourselves stim, right? So stimming is like repetitive self-soothing movements. If it's clicking a pen, if it's rocking back and forth, if it's tapping our toe, we might actually suppress that stimming because we don't want to stand out, right? We don't want to seem restless. But what happens is our brain's trying to regulate and we have this extra energy. And if we don't stim, which I think our call next week is on stimming, and we're going to go way in depth into that because it can be so good for your nervous system and really normalize it. But our brains are understimulated with stimming. And so stimming is trying to get ourselves regulated and stimulated so we can do the thing. If we suppress that, then what can happen is our thoughts can go kind of wild, or we can have a lot of anxiety because the brain's trying to stimulate itself somehow, and it might be creating cortisol and creating dopamine, right? So we might suppress stimming. So on the outside, our body looks calm because we don't want to be restless in a meeting, but inside we're going a little cuckoo. That's what I do in meetings if I can't move. Fidgeting, we might suppress that. Interrupting, not letting ourselves say what we want to say. That's some of the behavioral type masking. Or maybe just not even being ourselves because we're not sure if it's appropriate or if it's okay. Or we don't want to be too loud, too quiet. Cognitive, this is a type of masking, over preparing for something, being super early. You might be someone, maybe you're late sometimes, but maybe you're super early because you have time blindness and you have trouble gauging how long things take or how long to get there. So you're always really, really early because you don't want to stand out as being late, and that's a pattern. So over preparing is something as well. You might even be like rehearsing conversations in your head. That's really common for if you're on the autism spectrum as well. You might be editing your speech mid-sentence or going back on what you say or apologizing, rehearsing. These are things that might be masking. You might just pretend to be okay with what everybody likes or is doing. And you might not be. You might just go along with it because you don't know if it's okay. And then that's kind of the social aspect too, is people pleasing, mirroring others' tone or energy. So you might be kind of a chameleon, and it's not because you're fake, it's because you don't know if it's okay to totally be yourself. And so when you get around people or certain situations, you kind of morph or change to mirror them because you don't know how you come across, you know? You might hide emotional overwhelm. You might do that. You might push yourself to do things that you really should not do. Maybe you're totally overstimulated. You need introverted time, but you push yourself to do it anyways, and you push yourself past a certain point. And then professionally, you might overcommit. You might be a total perfectionist. I don't know if anybody else can be a perfectionist. Be the fixer, right? Trying to help, trying to do a bunch of stuff, which a lot of us want to help, but it also might be like we might feel like we're not good enough on our own, and so I've got to have a purpose. I've got to fix stuff. I've got to be the hero. I've got to do all this stuff. And this is feedback from people to have a purpose, because just being me and existing might not be okay. I've got to fulfill something, because socially I might not fit, right? I want, so there's a lot of ways that we can do it. Or it's really just suppressing our needs and our impulses. That's what, even if they're natural, right? That's a lot of what masking is. And we do it for social conditioning, that's biological. We want to get along with people. And this is really even more so common depending on gender roles, social, what's okay. You might have had, past trauma, and you don't want to be too much, not enough. You don't want to be too hard to manage. And you just need to make expectations. There's a lot of reasons why we mask. We don't want to stand out. We want to belong in our social groups, and we want to belong in communities. And those are natural behaviors. And there's this part of us that's afraid of, if we unmask and people really saw how we were kind of all over the place sometimes, or we're hyperactive, or we move a lot, we can't sit still, that we would get rejected, or people wouldn't like us, or we wouldn't be loved. And this isn't every way. It just depends, right? You might feel this sometimes, you might feel it all the time, you might not feel it. It just depends. But masking is like, hey, I want to belong and not stand out, or I don't want to overwhelm people. I don't want to be inappropriate. We just don't know. But it's that fear of, if I really showed everybody myself, maybe they wouldn't like me. And then we have that rejection sensitivity dysphoria. A lot of us, right? This major fear of rejection, and it can create emotional pain. And so it just adds another layer on top of masking. So some of the tools of masking, when we're suppressing impulses, or we're suppressing what we want to do, what we're doing is we're diverting energy from our core functions, like our working memory. Kind of think like we have a fuel tank that's dopamine, right? A fuel tank, and it's filled with dopamine. And that dopamine we use throughout the day to execute on tasks, to call people back, to regulate our emotions, to be intentional or disciplined, those kinds of things. And so masking takes some of that fuel, and it might pull away from our working memory. We might be constantly double checking your tone, your words, your posture. Am I okay, right? And then it might divert from gauging time. We might hyperfixate on being a little bit early, or initiating tasks, or doing things the right way, or just decision making. And then it can also add an extra layer for obsessive. Is anybody send an email, and then you've already sent it, but you read it again to see how it comes across, or you double checked it multiple times before you sent it, just kind of more than someone else. Someone else might just send it and be done. But we want to avoid perceived judgment, make sure we're being okay, we didn't say the wrong thing. We might not want to reach out. We might get paralyzed. We don't know if we're going to do it the right way, so we might not even make the call at all. That can happen sometimes. And so it's that can happen. And then we might avoid some of the potential rejection tasks, or get in approval seeking, or just fixate on a client maybe reading us the wrong way, and just get so fixated on it. So it's really interesting how it can kind of take a toll on us. And then energy, right? We might crash after some kind of networking, or a sales, or calls, or something like that, or we might need a full day to recover. So if you're on for the day, and you're making calls, and you're in your business, but you're not fully yourself, but you're doing it the way you think you're supposed to do, you might just be crashing on the weekend because it's taking so much energy to not be yourself, to like mask all these. You might need days to recover if you push yourself in networking or group settings that aren't as natural. So one thing when you're thinking of masking is, what are tasks in your business that drain you way more than they should? What are tasks that drain you way more than they should? And then, are you performing or are you participating? Right? If you go to networking events, if you go to social events, are you performing? And I don't mean that like you're being fake, right? This is kind of survival. This is like social survival. So there's no shame here. This is something we developed over time, like growing up, to protect ourselves because we got reprimanded, you know? I got reprimanded a lot in school. I was too sensitive. I was too particular. I only want to do what I want to do. I was selfish, all this stuff. But really, I have autism as well as ADHD, and I had very narrow interests, and I was always overstimulating and trying to manage that. But what happens is you grow up and think something's wrong with me. I'm too sensitive. I'm selfish. Like, even though I'm not, you know, and we carry that with us unless we identify, oh, I'm not too sensitive. I have sensory needs, you know, or I'm not selfish. I just have monolithic interests and very narrow interests. And if I get bored, it's literally feels like pain, you know? So unmasking it can be a pretty special thing. So in your brand, this is another thing I want to mention as well. One of the things you might think, oh, I need to do this. I need to perform this way. I need to mask because that's what's expected. I'm in this professional industry. I'm in real estate. Well, what I've seen coaching, you know, I've done over 10,000 one-on-one calls at this point. What I've seen with masking is your brand doesn't really stand out. It might be just kind of, it's like too polished, right? You're trying to perform the way you think, but you're not showing the human in it. And it doesn't feel authentic, or it's just too bland because it's what you think instead of just being your quirky self. Because I'll tell you, there are people I can think of right now that have unmasked that are probably on this call that I remember because they are themselves and they stand out, and they might be a little bit different on their social media, and they might have their real estate business tied to like video games because they're a video game nerd. And you think, oh, an adult that's into video games. No, there's a huge following. She gets a bunch of leads from that, you know? And so we're going to talk about the benefits of masking too, because this is really beautiful thing that can happen where you realize you don't have to wear the mask to be accepted anymore. And so we'll talk about that. But remember that sometimes masking actually does the opposite of what you want. It might not help your business. It might just keep you where you're not very memorable because it's just like everybody else. It's kind of boring. And then clients, if you're masking your message or yourself on social media, you're trying to follow these rules, your clients, the ideal clients that you want to work with that are fun, that are quirky or like you, they're not going to find you. They're not going to find you. You're going to draw in, you know, you're not going to draw in a specific type. It might be just, you know, that zip code or a little bit more bland or whatever, but you're going to have so much more fun when you unmask, especially in your social media and your brand. And you're going to attract clients that really are more like your real energy, you know, that can match your energy. And it's just, yeah, it's just fun. And then someone mentioned in the chat, I always pronounce it wrong, echolalia. That's what it is. So echolalia, and that's a really good point about masking. So what that is it's a lot of times auditory. You can say it out louder in your head, but you're repeating phrases over and over again. And kids can do it, and then also especially with autism. So you might repeat something in your head after somebody says it. You might do a song over and over again, certain words. So echolalia, I have absolutely heard of that. Put that in, Dan put that in the comments. And so that is a form of stimming. And if you need to do that and you don't allow yourself to do that, then that can be masking. So another thing is in your business, if you're masking, if you're doing things the way you think you're supposed to do it, because this is what somebody said, you're going to maybe have a little bit of trouble because your systems are built around like what you think they're supposed to be, not sustainability for you. So think of it like you have a certain expectation on yourself to be this certain agent that you think you're supposed to be, and you design your systems and your accountability and what you think around that versus like where you're actually at and what you're capable of. And that happens so often, even with non-ADHD agents. And what happens is you have these really big expectations on somebody that maybe it's not realistic. And so you freeze and do nothing and you feel shame. Instead of, hey, here's what I'm capable of. And I know, like for example, um, with my autism, I can be pretty introverted, and with ADHD too, right? And so working with buyers, I could only take, I mean, maybe 2 appointments tops in a day, sometimes one, because if I'm in a car all day talking to people and there's no time to regulate, my brain is going to be mush at the end of the day. So as much as I would have loved to have 3 appointments a day, because I was lead generating machine, I couldn't. It wasn't sustainable. So ideally it was one, and sometimes I needed off days. But if I told myself it's all about production and I forced myself to do it, I just like would get dissociated, or forcing yourself to do a type of lead generation. Let's say, for example, you have a extreme form of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, right? Like you get super triggered by that. And a lot of it's tonality on the phones. And you force yourself to do lead generation on the phones, no matter what, every day, instead of out meeting people. That could be a form of masking. You're trying to force yourself to do something that's causing you, a lot of discomfort that's not in your joy zone because you think you're supposed to, because that's what neurotypical people do, right? Whereas maybe you could achieve the same objective or more by doing it in a way that works with you, by going to a video game meetup, or having a newsletter on new video games, or doing a YouTube channel on that as well, or who knows, right? I think that's a fun example because you can really build a business on anything. So essentially, it's like stop trying to make yourself fit in a mold that doesn't fit. That's really what it is. And then just burnout is something you'll experience a lot. And then another like things that you might be masking is like if you forget to reply and then you're like, oh, I thought I pressed send, or this was in my drafts or something. You're like, and maybe it wasn't, but you're embarrassed. You're trying to mask the fact that maybe you missed it, or something like that, or not wanting to show time off. Trying to look a certain way and play a certain part instead of just being yourself. And so again, we can lose money by masking and trying to do stuff in a way that doesn't fit us, because it's not sustainable. So our brain's trying to protect us from getting dysregulated. And so again, I see this so much. It's kind of wild. It's like I have to do it this way, but I can't, and I'm frozen. And so I'm going to kind of try. I'm going to go to a bunch of classes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get harder on myself, harsher on myself, but it's still not really going to happen. And I'm going to beat myself up. And now I'm tired. Whereas if you did half of it, or you said that was good enough, or did a way that worked for you, you could have double, triple the amount of sales that you have. Again, we want to think: are your business systems in alignment with like, are they realistic with what you're capable of? Are they in alignment with the expectations of yourself? Are they in alignment with who you are? Is there anything that you can shift in your business it might feel like the easy way, but it still achieves the same objective? It's something to think about. And if you're going through stuff and you're feeling a lot of resistance or fatigue when you're doing your business or a certain task, think like, is there a way to do this differently? What's the path of least resistance to get this done? That's a question to ask all the time, is what's the path of least resistance? Could I do this 85 to 90% of what I'm doing now, but it would be way easier? That's another thing too. It doesn't have to be 100%. And so if you've been masking for a lot of your life, it's really interesting to stop masking because you're almost learning yourself again in a new way. And yeah, it's just, and then we can talk about for a second, like internalized like ableism, where it's like we have these standards. If we don't hit them, something's wrong with us. Because we do live in a productivity world and culture. And it's like, oh, I need to do this. I need to be on. I need to be disciplined. I got to grind. Whereas if we look at other countries, they don't always have those expectations. They stop at a certain time to have dinner. They have a 4-day work week. So understand the standards in a lot of the worlds we're in are pretty high. And then we hold ourselves to that. And we might not have accommodations or adaptations. And that can be a recipe for just kind of like self-doubt. So just throwing that out there, and then just some of the stuff with the emotional, right? Like if we're masking, there's probably a lot more going on internally. So what you'll find too, if you've got high anxiety, like I had for years and years, and now it's way different. What blew me away when I stopped masking and I let myself rock if I needed to, or I started doing things a different way or being more introverted, what just completely blew me away was your anxiety can go down. Your anxiety can go down. Your emotions, your mental health, everything can get so much better. It's really interesting how to do that. So a couple of things that you can do to unmask, and then we'll talk about like the benefits in the process, like flexibility, right? Dopamine first planning. When you're planning something, if you're not excited about, how can you create dopamine? How can you make it urgent? How can you make it feel more aligned with your interests or special interests? You might have like red, yellow, and green days. We've talked about those a while ago. I might do another call on that, where you have plan A, B, and C. And those are essentially if you have a high, medium, or low executive function day, where there's only a certain amount of output, then you might have different expectations on that day versus, hey, I'm not neurodivergent at all. I'm the exact same every day. I'm going to perform the same. And if not, I'm going to beat myself up. You might say, hey, this is a green day. I'm going to get ahead. Or, you know what, this is a red day. I'm having trouble getting out of bed. So I'm going to choose these 3 things that'll make it a win. And then I'm going to give myself grace and be done early. Right? So you allow the ebb and flow because our dopamine and our chemicals in our brain, for whatever reason, are not the same every day. They're just not with neurodivergence for a lot of us. And so understanding where you're at and going with it versus having the same expectations every single day that you've got to grow every day, that can lead to burnout. So we want to be a little bit more flexible. And then, we want to align our business with things that are fun, like income. Right? We've talked about INCUP before. These are the 5 things that actually light up an ADHD brain. And so we want to get our business in alignment with INCUP. So INCUP stands for interesting, new, challenging, urgent, and passion. So we want to get everything we can. We want it to make it urgent if we can, new, challenging, urgent, and part of passion. So interesting, new, challenging, urgent, passion. I talked about this on the podcast with Jay. So go to ADHDtyler.com if you want to listen to that podcast that we just did. So yeah, get it into your joy zone as much as you can. And also know with masking, when we're talking about unmasking, what's going to happen is this is like a lifeline, right? That you've used to protect yourself your whole life. And so you're not going to just one day go out there and completely unmask. That might be flooding to your system. It might feel scary. And so you might try little things. You might bring a fidget toy to a meeting one time instead of just sitting there and like feeling anxious. You might allow yourself to get up for extra bathroom breaks, which really just go walk around in the hall and regulate. You might leave a training early if you're not getting a lot from it. Has anybody been in a training and they're really just spending the whole time regulating? You're not even learning. You're just trying to sit still. Yeah, that's a lot of heads quickly. Oh yeah, right. And so that's why those all-day trainings. Good on you if you can go to those. But I realized I just spent the whole day trying to regulate with the lights and somebody's chewing gum and I'm not even absorbing the information. So I typically don't do all day trainings. Even when I come do market centers, I do like 2 hours tops because otherwise I'm just trying to stay there and fulfill what I think I'm supposed to do. I'm not even learning at that point. So some of this is just kind of your tolerance for being uncomfortable is going to get thinner, and that's a good thing. That can be a really good thing. And so you're going to unmask, and it's going to be a process. It's kind of like you're dipping your toe in to make sure it's safe, and it might feel kind of uneasy. You might say a joke that you wouldn't say, and you're going to see how it lands, and think, oh man, I'm funny, or oh, that was a little over the top, or you might just say the thing that you would have held in before, and maybe it'll work out really well. You just never know, but it's kind of a process that you're going to play with because your nervous system can be kind of scared, when you're undoing stuff that for so long felt like survival. And so if you want to think about it, you can journal about it, you can think about it, but it's like, what are some of the parts of me that I'm still trying to hide? That's a really good question to ask yourself. Like, what am I trying to hide? What do I feel like if people saw, maybe it wouldn't seem as professional, or they wouldn't like me, or it might stand out, or it might be too much? What are these parts? And it doesn't mean you got to throw them out there and make a YouTube video showing them all. And I say this because that expectation to just unmask, I think, like for me, I had to gradually do it over time because it was scary. It was really scary. And also, like, as a leader, that was a big thing I'll share too, because I've been in some big roles, and it was really scary to unmask because I've spent all these years masked and got where I got. And it's like, well, what if I undo this and now I don't seem professional or people don't like me anymore? That was really scary for me. It was very gradual over time to make sure that I didn't like lose my whole career. And it turned out it made my own career. That's why I'm here, because I unmasked instead of just trying to be this, perfect real estate agent doing it a certain way and just trying to fit in. And then just like allowing that vulnerability in confidence, like just admitting if there's something you struggle with or asking for help, which is kind of hard for us sometimes. That can be a way to unmask. So we're not covering up or trying to, not lie, but we're just saying like, yeah, this is me. I'm imperfect and messy like every other human on the planet, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. And I'm always going to intentionally try to be the best person I can. And if sometimes I fall short and I'm late or I say the wrong thing, then I say, oops, and then I apologize and I move on, and another thing that can happen with unmasking, you have this like freedom and you get energy back. Things, and I'll go through that list in a second. You'll start getting your energy back, and it's like this beautiful thing where it's like, oh my gosh, the mask is off and people like me, and it's people like me for me, and it's so different than trying to be something. Now, what can happen though too when you start unmasking is there can be grief with it. That can happen as well. And there might be some people in your world that move away from you. You might switch out a couple friends. You might get feedback from your partner or your family. It's like, hey, you knew you had ADHD this whole time. Why is this an uptick? Why all of a sudden can't you watch this movie? Why can't you sit still? You used to be able to. Because once you recognize where you're masking and you don't want to do it anymore, it's really hard to be like, you can't go back because you know how much better it is. It's like oppressing to mask who you are. And so once you undo that, people around you sometimes have to get used to it. And yeah, there is grief. There can be grief that comes with it because once you get to the other side, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I spent so many years so scared to be myself. And now I feel like this is like my livelihood and I love life and I'm so in life and so present. And I'm grieving all these years that I thought I couldn't when I really could, because look what happened. So there can be grief with that. Just like when you get a diagnosis and you look back, or if you start medication and it really helps you and it gets easier, there might be grief of how hard it was. And then you see how like easy it can be if medication is something you choose. I went through that as well. The right meds, right? And then the other thing with grief is you might lose some people. That can happen as well. Or you might need to shift things around. And they say, or there's people that you really like that liked you for who you were, and you unmask and maybe it pushed them away. And you have to grieve those relationships. It just depends. But they say that unmasking can be one of the most beautiful and painful experiences. There's some people that experience that, but my friend who's a therapist with neurodivergence, that's something that she shared with me. So it's mixed, and ultimately it can totally open up your whole world. And then you can start teaching the people around you what things are. So this is another cool thing with unmasking, is that if you tell, like, let's say you unmask, right? Well, here's an example, and I've used this before, but with my mom, right? So I have a lot of sensory stuff with eating noises, and I think I've shared this example. But once I recognize that, instead of sitting there and eating, or just with family or whatever, and the eating noises, like, because I have the sensory stuff is so strong, now I put music on, so it diverts just the constant eating noise, which is part of like misophonia that you can have, like a sensitivity to sound. It's actually a difference in your brain wiring. So misophonia is the word for that if you have that. But now I can put music on, or even sometimes put headphones in if my sensory stuff is really high. And now because of Unmasked, and I've taught them, they don't think, I tell them, this is not about your eating. Your eating is normal. This is not a you thing. This is me, and I'm going to use this accommodation. So now, instead of me being tense at dinner and having trouble talking, if I have a low sensory day, everybody knows what's going on and nobody's feelings are hurt, and my nervous system's regulated. And then after dinner, we can hang out and I'm not having to go regulate or on edge or hit my limit. So it's unmasking can be a really beautiful thing, and you're gonna teach people things that you might need. And I don't need to do that all the time. I can go to restaurants. It's just sometimes when I have a lower sensory input day, I need to do that, and now it doesn't make anybody feel bad, and I'm not thinking it's them. So you're going to see peace. Your nervous system is going to get more regulated. Your anxiety is going to go down. Your depression is going to go down. This is a way to reverse burnout. If you've been masking your whole life, you could very well be in burnout. Like, think about that. If you're in your passion and you are loving what you're doing, it's really in alignment with you, are you going to get burned out? Especially with ADHD, no, we're going to get dopamine all over the place. We're going to be the opposite of burned out. So if you're in burnout, because I've helped a lot of people reverse it with coaching, if you're in burnout right now, there's a very good chance you've been masking. And so think about the thing that's draining your energy the most, and think about how you can shift that and stop masking. So that's gonna happen. You're gonna feel passion coming back. And we can even have psychosomatic, like if you're always tired, and you don't have a chronic illness or some kind of allergy going on. If you're always tired, you're always fatigued, you're very likely masking, because it takes a toll on us. Your passion's going to come back. Like, I need to get my mojo back. Anybody said that or heard that? I need to get motivated. You need to get my mojo back. Get your business in alignment with your brain and your passions. You're going to build confidence as well. Your executive function is going to go up when you stop masking, because you're not using all this bandwidth to act normal. So your brain is going to have more bandwidth for other stuff like memory, planning, focus. That's going to have a stronger self-worth. So there's a very powerful thing that happens when you unmask and you see people are still there, and you see the people that like you and love you. And it's like, oh my gosh, I took the mask off and everybody's still here and they like me. Your confidence is going to go up significantly, significantly. It's a really amazing thing. You're also going to have deeper, more authentic relationships. So the more real you are, the more your relationships are going to reflect that mutual depth and realness. So if you're not going to be people pleasing, you're going to say, hey, I actually don't like this, or I actually do like this. Or here's how I feel about this authentically, instead of, ooh, I feel too much, I feel too big, I shouldn't feel that way. Oh, I should suppress this. And what it's going to do, you're going to get more connection, deeper connection. And with your spouse, with the people around you, with your clients. Unmasking invites intimacy and actual safety, as long as it's safe people, that get it. It's going to invite that healthy intimacy. You're also going to start noticing your needs and boundaries more in your capacity. So you're going to recognize what works for you, what pace you need, what kind of environment you work well in, what your limits are, what your boundaries are, when you need to turn your phone up. Because here's the thing, if you've been masking your whole life, a lot of us have had to totally dissociate from our nervous systems because we just had to. It's like we couldn't pay attention to the warning signals because they went off, and we just had to forget them. And this is like, have you ever set an alarm to do something and you just stop listening to the alarm and you just ignore it? I know some people, it's kind of like that. If you just had to override that alarm with masking for a majority of your life, and you just don't listen to it, once you start unmasking and you're actually to be able to present in your body and your nervous system, now you're going to fine tune that. So you're going to figure out, hey, I'm thirsty. Hey, I can only go on appointments this amount of days. Hey, I need to take a break when I do this. And your mental health is going to get better. A lot of things are going to get better. You're going to start to learn yourself. And then research shows masking is actually, this is like research linked to anxiety, depression, identity confusion. So unmasking, again, is that nervous system regulation. It's going to give you room to process, and you're going to all of a sudden, have a very different business and life as you do this. But again, it doesn't have to be a race. It doesn't mean if you've masked up to this point, you missed the boat or you failed. Masking was this incredible coping mechanism that helped you get where you are and probably saved you, as a kid or whatever. And so it's like, some people, it's like life or death or survival. And so as you start to unmask, if you get anxiety, you're almost, this is my mental health background coming in, but kind of speaking to that part of you that's been trying to keep you safe and say, no, you can't do that. You can't say that. You can't be yourself. It's not okay. You're going to get rejected. And so you can, if you get, that's really strong, you can sue that and say, hey, thank you so much for keeping me safe all these years. Thank you so much for getting me to this point. this is a different environment. This is a different situation. This may not serve me anymore, but I appreciate your service, and let's try this. Let's dip our toe in. So there might even be some of that you do as well. But ultimately, be who you are, so the people who need you can find you. Like, be yourself, because there's people out there who need you, who would love who you are without the mask, or without part of the mask, wherever you are in your unmasking journey, but they can't find you because you've got the mask on, right? And so be who you needed as a kid, be who you need to be where the people find you, and it's just it's so different. It's so different. So I'm really excited for everyone to try this if you haven't yet. So that's the majority of my content with the unmasking portion. And you'll play with that as you go. And again, remember, it is a process. And so with ADHD, we can be very all or nothing, black and white thinking. And so we think, okay, this week I'm going to unmask, and we flood the system. It's too scary, and we don't do it anymore. That can happen as well. And so just ease into it. It's not a race, and really just be yourself. Try some stuff out and build that confidence. And it's pretty neat. Thank you guys for being here. It's one of my favorite parts of the week. We'll see you next week, unless you're in our group coaching, ADHD Agents, ADHDagents.com. And then we have the other part of our business planning, ADHD Friendly Business Plan Clinic, this Thursday. So we'll either see you Thursday or Tuesday. Have a great week. And remember, who you are, take off the mask. Who you are is wonderful, and your life will get better more and more the more that you keep that mask off. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for your involvement, participation, and we'll see you next time.